you find happening, what you find happening when these children become adults and they are confronted with similar situations, we, the TTP, as the police officers, are seeing that some of these things that they experienced when they were younger, especially in the homes, are now being played out in the school, are now being played out in society, are now being played out in relationships. And it's almost like a cycle that keep going goes on and on. And that is why I said earlier on that I love the fact that I've been invited here because I think you all are onto something good. And anytime you all onto something good, what happens? Satan has always sent his assassins, and this time the assassin will not get through because what I'm going to share with you is going to bring a lot of questions and a lot of introspection because this whole transgenerational trauma thing is something that a lot of us ignore and don't pay attention to. And it is important for us to have the right systems in order to treat with crimes, especially serious crimes. And let me tell you one of the top 10 crimes in the world that this type of trauma affects outside of killing, outside of murder, rape. Rape is a crime that a lot of women, mostly women, do not ever recover from. It leaves it leaves some indelible scars on them for life. And I just want to share. I have a lot of experiences. I want to share how deep and how rape affects an entire family. There's a couple that I know who had what you call a home invasion some years ago, and during the home invasion, the bandits perpetrators would have sexually assaulted the wife in the presence of the husband. Um, Thankfully, none of them were killed, but the scars that the perpetrators left in that family slowly helped to deteriorate the entire family because of the fact that they did not get the right um, type of psychosocial intervention to help them treat with that specific problem to the point that the couple started to fight post that crime and it ended up in our domain. And one of the things I took note of is the type of remarks or utterances that were made by the male towards the female. Every time there's an issue, he will bring up that specific incident. And it all it helped do was to further traumatize the lady who was violated more than anything else. And she has reached the point where she wants to dissolve or get out of the marriage and move on. He is scorning her because he believed that she was touched by somebody else. And one of his remarks that I totally detest that he made during the argument was that you look like you was enjoying it. And I had to pull him aside and tell him that, he needs to have a little more, show a little more empathy towards his partner because she will be dealing with this for the rest of her life. And I do not think that um, we have, I shouldn't say we have, but I do think that we in society here understands how different type of crime or crimes like that affect us, affect the people around us. And what it has done besides deteriorating the marriage, it has put the male now, excuse me, into what I call retaliatory mode. So he has reached the stage of talking about arming himself with something illegal so that it does not happen again. He is now preaching a type of negative sermon that, every time he see bandits do something, and he wants he is saying that the police should kill them, and he's angry. He's angry. She's disappointed, and it's just so terrible for them and a lot of other people when these things do happen. Therefore, it is important for us when you see these things happen to develop what I call a certain level of mental maturity in order to treat, in order to help support our friends, our neighbors, whenever they have these type of traumatic experience. So one of the things we encourage is that we make recommendations, firstly, to the Victim and Witness Support Unit. It's a unit that is within the TTPS, but it is not run or operated by police officers. It's run by civilians, persons who have been trained and accredited with certificates in psychology. So they help us to get the victim back to a normal state of mind. They help in that healing process. But but outside of them, because they may only be able to do a couple of sessions for 2 or 3 hours, but the most important people to help others recover from serious crimes are your loved ones. Your loved ones, your close friends, family members are the ones who will bring you back out of that dark place. And those persons must understand the level of privacy, confidentiality that is needed in in those times. Because what we often tend to do is engage in victim blaming. And I must also tell you that I'm the inspector for the Child Protection Unit, likewise the Gender Based Violence Unit. So I'm seeing different types of abuse. And one of the things you see that is prevalent in victim blaming among the Child Protection Unit is when family members telling some of the young teenagers who would have fallen prey to some of the adult men is that it's good for them. You look for that, you're too fast. And according to the law, a child under the age of 18 cannot give consent to sex. So when you start to blame that child instead of helping that child to get stronger, mentally stronger, as they prepare to become an adult, you are actually helping them with that healing process. Because if you fail to do that, what happens in some of the cases that I have been reading from the Child Protection Unit is that some of the victims, some of the young girls who have been the victim of statutory rape, when they become adults, because of that lack of love and support, they often get involved in serious relationships when they become adults with the person who was actually violating them when they become older. And the reason for that is, again, lack of psychosocial support from loved ones and friends, and a series of victim blaming. Another crime, I don't want to take up too much time because I would like people to ask me some questions. Another crime that a lot of people don't pay attention to and they get a lot of victim blaming from is something called romance fraud. Now, romance fraud is relatively an old crime with a new name that is on the rise. And the reason why it is on the rise now more than anything else, it is because it's a crime that is prevalent online, where persons will meet somebody online and eventually in person. And that person, that criminal person will encourage mostly females to give up or surrender some of their cash, have them take loans and just disappear from their life. There's a uh, Netflix movie on a true story about it. I think it's something tender, but I'll get the correct name as we go along. And we are seeing a lot of that in this country where a lot of persons are now heading to the fraud squad because they would have met somebody online and they would have developed a relationship online, communicating with that person. And what happens is that that person would have convinced them to surrender some finances or loan and promise them a lifelong relationship. And turned out to be uh, it turned out to be a scheme. So the movie it came out last year. It's a true story. The name of it is the Tinder Swindler. Tinder Swindler happened to be a dating site that one of these guys would have logged on to, and he would have taken millions from different women around the world and taken money from one and romance the other. We don't have it like that right now, but it is happening where persons are being encouraged to send money to persons that they do not know. And what happens is that when they tell other persons about it, instead of giving them the support, we are hearing things like the person who they went to get that support, that person is telling them you're too stupid, you're dotish, how you go send money. But what happens is that when people get into conversations with other people, there's some men and some women too have that powerful gift of influence. And when you do a lot of reading and research, it goes way back to men who possess that type of skill. And two names comes to mind, two American names, that is Jim Jones back in the 70s in Guyana, and likewise a guy by the name of David Koresh, who would have had that level of influence, and that is from the Waco, Texas um, situation back in 1993 in the U.S. And we are seeing now that there are a lot of Africans from around the world who are doing similar stuff and encouraging people to even join different small churches, small cults right in Trinidad here. And before you know it, some of the persons who are part of these um, new traditional type of gatherings are being convinced to give up all their hard earned possession. And by the time they realize what is going on, they have lost everything they may have spent 20, 25 years working for. And these type of crimes, along with the rape, are what we are seeing on the rise, and it hurts. It hurts a lot of people because when it is time to try to track down some of these persons, um, there's not enough information that is being provided because sometimes the only thing they may have is a online picture profile and a name that really does not exist. So I know we started late, and I will like to give people opportunity to to ask a few questions and get some answers because I like these type of interactive sessions, and I often tell most of the listening audience if you have at least 200 questions, I have at least 1,000 answers. And it's based on my intimate relationship with crime in this country and the region and other parts of the world that I have been fortunate to network with other officers in different places to give me an update in terms of trends and patterns as it relates to criminal activity.
All right, so we want to thank you for your session so far. I think it was quite informative. If we have any questions at this time, feel free to chime in with your questions so that you can have them answered.
Well,
In the
if there are
meantime,
any questions, I can continue.
Good night.
Good.
Good night.
Hi,
Good
good
night,
evening.
ma'am.
Right. So you spoke about transgenerational
Trauma.
I'm looking at our society today with these young people fighting at school, fighting on the streets. And when you look at it and you do studies and you go back, or you realize that it didn't start at school, it starts way back in the home. You spoke about psychosocial intervention, but I'm wondering to know if psychosocial intervention would really help, because the child might get psychosocial intervention, yes. What about the parent? For example, you spoke about the mother who was raped and daddy or the husband's reaction towards her, how it was. Now, he did not understand what she was going through. The children in the home they would not understand what is happening. And I see all of this as the transgenerational trauma. I'm wanting to know if psychosocial intervention would help this family to regain some sense of normalcy. That's my question.
Ma'am, I will answer and say yes, but it must not be psychosocial intervention in terms of we have 3 sessions and that is it. That is a problem. Because I've been speaking to some of my colleagues or friends that I would have made from the FBI Academy years ago, and the same question came up. And one of the things that came up as one of the answers was not just the quantitative aspect of psychosocial intervention, but the quality of psychosocial in the qualitative type of psychosocial intervention and specific treatment that was discussed as relates to dealing with that type of trauma. Because if if it continues as it is, right, because nothing is being done and it is getting worse. The wife has the 2 kids. The 2 kids are still trying to treat with or try to understand why daddy is no longer in the environment with them. And they too are starting to show or exhibit signs of violence, especially boy, in the school already. So the thing about it is that if we just say no, well, that wouldn't work or don't try anything, I strongly believe that things will get worse. And I believe that the type of psychosocial intervention will depend on the quality, the level of experience by the clinical psychologist in terms of having dealt with those type of incidents before, and how much sessions will be needed for that particular family. And most importantly, we will want to encourage them to engage in prayer, because I myself is a believer, and there's no greater healer than the Lord himself. I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with me saying that, but I strongly believe that, along with the psychosocial intervention, this family support, and that strong will in Christ, it will, that is what is going to be the the path to restoration for that couple. Do you suggest an alternative treatment? Is it Miss Manchester? No?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
With support, I agree with the psychosocial intervention, and I also agree with support from your family and those around you, your peers. So I would add that also.
All right.
Mhm.
All right. There's one that I would have discovered as well that is also prevalent, and it's not so much of a crime, it's more of a hurt. Now, what we are seeing in the gender-based violence unit, and I often talk about this topic with some of the ladies. So what I do, I will see a situation developing, and then I will put a label on it, and then I will come back and discuss it in a bigger forum. One of this is one I labeled, and it's I often tell a lot of women, do not surrender your finances in the relationship. And let me explain. There are couples who would have met at a young age, and we have seen this from since time immemorial. The woman will start having kids, and the man is out at work. So there's an agreement, a verbal agreement between them, where the man will work and the woman will stay home and take care of the kids. What we are seeing is that after the woman would have taken care of the children for, let's say, 20, 25 years, the children are now adults, the man is no longer interested in the relationship. So he moves on to some younger person, or Spanish or something, kind of fetish our men have these days is strange. And what we are seeing happen is that in that in that decision, the woman who would have surrendered her finances, meaning that she would have given up her livelihood, so she surrendered her pension, her gratuity, her vacation, and her salary, and made the decision to take care of the kids. In the end, her partner runs out on her, and she at probably now 47, 50, now looking or now trying to get a job. And depending on her level of education and qualification, it's difficult to have a job at that age that will provide sustainable income for her, especially if the husband leaves her with probably rent, mortgage, and stuff to pay. So I often, and we have seen a lot of cases, but I personally got involved in where a lot of men have done that, and they have left the woman in a state of shock and despair and confusion, because the woman would have subscribed to some type of dependency syndrome from their partner. So they would have hoped that he would have continued the agreement. And when that agreement has been broken, the person who finds themselves on the worst end of the stick, and most of the times it's the women, because sometimes they are still with probably younger children who have not yet started, probably still going university, and they have to depend on this partner who left them to get a meal and maintain a roof over their head. And you are seeing some of the women, very much traumatized. Some of them are actually because of the fact that they would have even abandoned further development in terms of academic qualifications. You are seeing where they are looking for a new partner to provide that level of security for them. And, it puts them in a worse off position because they are now vulnerable, and sometimes they pick up somebody else and who that person is violent, is even more abusive. So you're seeing where, women are going from situations to situations. I don't even want to say relationships, from situations to situations based on a bad, well, I don't want to say a bad, an arrangement that was not carefully, thought out or analyzed. And it's something that I advise. I know some men might find it offensive. It's something that I advise a lot of women to think carefully, and and even if you attempt or you agree to do it, um, in your spare time at home, still try to probably acquire uh, a degree or continue your education or develop a skill that in the event that plan A falls apart, that they now could still get a job or start a business, depending on what field they would have, trained in during that period of time, so that they will have something to fall back on. It's an area that is currently affecting a lot of our older females who are approaching, who just crossed middle age in their mid 50s and are struggling to recover from that type of hurt.
Inspector, it's interesting that you would share that, and I really want to say it's important that we have programs like these, because at least to sensitize persons to such reality. Because you were saying that, and I was thinking about someone that I knew who went through that very, very same thing, and I watched her. She was so, every day she would come and her eyes puffy from crying, from this very same situation, had to go back to school, and at a later age, had to start from scratch. At least in her case, she was trying to do it on her own, not trying to, find another partner. But this is real, and it's something that really, really can break a person. I have seen it. So what I really wanted to also comment on is on the previous comment. We really need to sensitize persons. I mean, you can have all these interventions, you can have all these programs, and persons not taking advantage or enrolling themselves or trying to seek help. It's another thing. And I think that we still live in a society where people see seeking counseling and trying to deal with your trauma as something wrong with you. Few persons will, pick up themselves and really, you would have gone through, especially when you talk about situations such as childhood trauma. You talk about intergenerational or transgenerational trauma. These things live with you. They affect you. It affects your day-to-day decisions that you make even as an adult. And these are things that would have happened sometimes in your childhood, teenage years. They don't just go away. So I think it's also important that we, sensitize persons to that is normal. It's normal to seek help when you need help. It's normal to understand that, sometimes these things may be a bit too much to deal with, because we can see, and I think it is plain from your presentation, that these trauma can lead to crime. It can lead you to do things that in a normal space you probably wouldn't do. Yeah, so I think, yes, we want to have persons have these different interventions that's readily available in Trinidad, because we have a lot of avenues. Persons can go to seek help, but are they really seeking the help that is out there? Are persons really aware of every program that's out there that can be to their benefits? And are they willing to go because of these. I think it still have some level of stigma attached to it.
And you're absolutely right. You know, we must develop that level of mental maturity to accept that we have a problem. We have an issue that needs to be dealt with. And it also boils down to the ability of the loved ones and the friends to actually come out and say, look, I will go to you to these sessions. I think you need to talk to someone, because people always find that when you tell them that they need help, it's insulting, it's degrading, and they want to react in such a way that, you know, you feel like mad, you feel like you know what I talk about. Me mad, I ain't mad, I know what I'm talking about. And we have to find subtle ways of telling, you know, people, look, you know, I think you need to understand or treat with this problem differently. I think we should talk to somebody. And we could even start to talk, you know, we could start with the pastor, because I always like that divine intervention. I believe in that. And then we could talk about moving on to the social worker and group sessions. And I love group sessions because group sessions actually, you know, help us to treat with some of the trauma. But we have a society with a lot of, you know, with a big egotistical appetite, in the sense that, um, especially with the men, I mean going through that. I not going through all jokey thing. And a lot of our men are hurting inside. And there's a saying that hurt people tend to hurt people. And I'll give you an example. I have a lot of examples. When I was a young, and I often tell young women this as well, try to, you know, when you're dating someone for the first time, try to get as much historical data on their family background. And I will tell you why. Many years ago, when I was a young officer, about 2 or 3 years service, I had the most troubling experience that, never left my mind, when I experienced a man would have killed his wife, and they would have left behind about 8 or 9 children, and she was pregnant at the time. And those children were born, let's say, late late um late 70s, early 80s, growing up. And whilst I looked at that situation, it troubled me for years, and it came back to haunt me sometime in December 2021, because one of the young men who survived that that period when his father would have taken the life of his mother, he and his brothers and sisters were sent into foster care. But because of the small space in Trinidad, they would have found each other. But at that time, we were not educated enough as a society to apply that psychosocial intervention for these young children at the time. And what happened is that history repeats itself, and the whole concept of intergenerational trauma came into play. Because what happened next, it was unbelievable. In 2021, one of the survivors, one of the kids, started threatening his own wife and children with, you know, threatening their lives. And um, the superintendent in her wisdom would have sent us to remove the wife and the children away from him unknown. And when I had the opportunity to hear the wife speak, and she started to talk about an incident that happened years ago to him, I recognized then that he was one of the children who, had to witness that unfortunate incident. he started, calling around, asking for the kids, asking for his wife, but we did not share that information with them because we recognized that he had a mindset that, in my view, was, I consider it to be combustible and explosive. Eventually, he gave up, lit the house on fire, and eventually took his life. And whilst we may be satisfied to a point that we would have saved the wife and the children, there's something that we are not paying attention to. That is not a properly a situation that has been resolved or stopped, because he would have done the same thing the father did. And the possibility, we are hoping that we are educated enough to help this mother and the children to prevent that continuing. And this is what is taking place in society, even amongst what you're seeing in the street. You are seeing young men who were 10 or 11 years old when their father was killed. They are now 20, 21, and they are picking up arms and engaging in street violence because that is all they know, that is all they would have accepted, and that is the only way they know how to resolve conflict. So again, back to the purpose of this program, in order to help the young people, and especially we have to be thinking 10, 15 years from now, because we have some 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds who have been exposed to serious crime. And I don't think a 3-day, 2-hour session will help them to recover from this type of trauma. So you're absolutely right, and it affects men different to women. You're also seeing, coming off of that transgenerational trauma, you're seeing cases of toxic masculinity. You're seeing behaviors of some men that actually where some men are encouraging themselves to engage in behaviors that is not only unacceptable, that makes society and the people around them uncomfortable. And you're seeing it from the school coming up. We also have the toxic femininity that comes from that type of exposure, that type of trauma as well. And all these labels that I'm using, I know there are persons who are sitting in the audience who are quite familiar with them and probably would have discussed this before, right? And thankfully, the TTPS has reached the stage where we are not blind to some of these, not some of these particular issues. And I've started a couple of outreach programs by going into the school and talking to some of the young men and some of the women, and with a hope of, well, not just a hope, the intention is to change their belief system. And in order to do that, there must be constant, regular communication programs like these. And I was, hoping that these programs could, catch a wider audience, because there are a number of persons who are doing things and they don't realize what they're doing are affecting others. They don't realize that what they're doing is wrong. And they have reached the point, a lot of people have reached the point that the behaviors are actually acceptable when it's not. All right. So let me take a pause, because I will go on and on and, encourage or entertain an opinion, a suggestion, or even a question.
All right, I'm seeing one raised hand. You can go ahead.
This is Miss Winchester again.
Hi, hi.
Yes, ma'am.
Comment TTPS for the good job that they are doing. And earlier you asked me, besides psychosocial intervention, what else? And based on what you're presenting tonight, I'm seeing the importance of our society understanding why we should get counseling. Because the people that say Black people don't believe in counseling is like you're showing that you're weak. And it's not that you're showing that you're weak. You need help, and there's help available, and you could embrace that help, and change could take place. I also see that based on what you're saying, that sensitizing the children, sensitizing the family, this going to the schools. I know that the TTPS goes to school and they do sensitization programs, which is very good. I'm also suggesting that since COVID, a lot of the police youth group, they've gone cold. If we could start revamping the police youth group, we could have like mentorship programs, like the Big Brother programs, Big Sister programs, where even though a child comes from a home that is not, we don't have the perfect home, but situation are happening that is not perfect or is not good. Children are affected. We could now this was my trend at all. Yes, situation are happening. Once we have people to support you, we have the mentorship program, we have the police youth group, something is happening in the home, we have the group there, we could go and we could talk to somebody there and they could help us. So that's just answering the question that you had asked me earlier, and it's just continuing to what. But one thing I would like you to touch on before you leave though, is to let us know the importance of reporting, especially when children are hurt sexually, when they're abused, the importance of not reporting and the importance of reporting. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution, Ms. Winchester. I know a few of the heads who run some of the police youth club, and I will definitely express or share your sentiments and express to them how much the people outside there recognize the value of for them to continue what they're doing, because a lot of people don't give them the type of recognition that is needed. There's a ACP by the name of Mr. Hazel. He's from Tobago, and Mr. Hazel is someone who, yes, Mr. Hazel is somebody that I don't think enough recognition has been given to. Mr. Hazel, in my view, should have been given a Shakunia award or some award for the amount of work he would have done over the years in the youth club for a number of young people in both Trinidad and Tobago. The type of success stories that comes out from Mr. Hazel, and it's not to say he's a friend of mine per se, but I'm very, I've paid attention and followed a lot of his work. And, he's a gentleman that I admire, because someone who takes interest in young people is interested in the future of any society. All right. So with that being said, I would like to take the opportunity to touch on that point that you asked me to touch on. It's an offense. It is an offense to fail to report any incident of child abuse, be it sexual abuse or cruelty. And let me give an example let me tell you what sexual abuse, any type of touching of a child, any type of touching of a child that tantamounts to sexual touching a child private parts, touching a child in such a way that is considered to be sexual. When it comes to cruelty, we focus on the level of abuse, be it psychological or physical, that a child undergoes: withholding food, education, neglect, and even abuse, physical abuse with a piece of wood or cable that some parents believe is the only way to correct a child, those things tantamount to cruelty. And if it is discovered that any parent, guardian, or persons who have the responsibility for any child fails to report any such abuse, they can be charged under the Children's Act 4601 for an offense. And we have seen a lot of that within recent time. What happens is that a lot of people try to conceal these type of abuse, especially when it takes place with a family member. We have a case where a, a sister, her husband um, took advantage of her teenage sister who is under 18 years of age. And because he's such a good brother-in-law, good son-in-law, the family has made attempts or refused to make the report when the child reported it. But thankfully, we have very good, um, counselors in some of the schools. And one of the counselors, the school guidance counselor, noticed that the child was behaving in an unusual way. And she used her interpersonal skills and would have been able to extract from that child information that suggests that the child is being abused and it's being concealed. That matter was brought to the attention of the Child Protection Unit, and now all the persons, including the father and some of the child's siblings, are the subject of an investigation. And what has happened as well is that the Children's Authority has gotten involved and they have removed the child from the home and put that child in a place of safety. So all those goodly persons who believe that they could conceal um, these type of abuses and hope that the child does not say anything, we have a lot of skillful people in society that pays attention to behavior and body language, and they could tell when something is wrong, and they will approach the child and they will eventually bring it to the attention of the authorities. And when it comes to our attention, I at that stage I do not spare anyone because I am one of the persons who have an issue. I have a big issue on child abuse. Another area, another area that we are seeing a lot of, as I mentioned, children. We are seeing a lot of area where adults are encouraging children to look at pornographic videos and pornographic pictures. We know that we recognize that is a form of sexual grooming, so that when the child sees these videos, the child becomes a little more submissive, wanting to try what is being shown in the videos. That too is an offense under the Children's Act, exposing children to pornographic material, and additionally, the offense of sexual grooming comes into play. So there, I'm glad that Ms. Winchester took me along this road, because there's a lot of offenses that could take place with children if we are not careful, especially when we are unaware of the dangers. There are persons giving children alcohol and encouraging them to smoke marijuana. Those are also offenses under the Children's Act. The Children's Act would have had some amendments to it within recent times, and there are some offenses that parents are unaware of. Sometimes parents are for Christmas are at home and everybody's having a good time, and somebody will give their 14 or 15-year-old son a drink or a beer, and they may see that as something innocent. That is also a serious offense that the parents can be charged. Right? So I hope that would have covered that part of it for you, Miss Winchester.
Yes, sir. It did.
Right.
Okay,
Any other
we want to
questions?
thank you
Okay.
for the comments so far. Anybody else would like to get in on the questions just before we wrap up very shortly? All right.
Good evening. I just want to find out, we got a lot of knowledge this evening from the officer, and we're thinking in terms of public sensitivity. How, because I am learning a lot tonight because of this program, but how does the public become aware of all these things that are happening? Because I believe there are lots of people who don't even know, we speak about counseling, and how is the public made aware of what is offered, what is being offered?
Excellent question, ma'am. So what has happened over the past 3 years, Ms. Valdez, is that when the gender-based violence unit started, we ran into, our timing was, we were running alongside COVID. And we decided, look, if, we do not get this information out there, when the COVID really steps in, we will have more problems, because it is a case where the victim or the survivor will be spending more time with the abuser or the perpetrator. So we took the advantage from the social media aspect of things and went on a series of outreach programs, which I would have done. I would have done it for the soldiers. I would have done it for nearly the entire defense force, a number of schools, churches. And what we started doing is encouraging NGOs, different NGOs. We partnered with a number of different NGOs so that they too will also spread the word that this is something new that the TTPS is offering, and this is how we are going about things. We even went to Tobago. We partnered with the people from the UN. They would have helped sponsor us. So every time we had things like the 16 days of activism, we will come out in the streets in our orange jerseys, and we will walk about with leaflets and pamphlets, and every opportunity that we would have gotten to spread and educate people, we would have did it. The trouble is, I would have gone to something in Macoya that they had a symposium, and a few, but women are mostly interested in these things, and the women will come and and they will look at it, but most of the time everybody believes that this type violence or some situations will never happen to them, especially people in the area of domestic violence. A lot of the women who were killed as a result of domestic violence believe, and I'm stressing on this word, believe that they were in control of the situation and they did not need the police involvement. And we, the police, would have gone to a level, and this is something we don't really advertise because it's something that is geared towards women who need help. So I would have gone to the superintendent and we would have came up with something called an escape plan for some of the women. It's also, some people call it the exit plan, but we call it the escape plan for a lot of women who would want to escape from their abusers by probably leaving the country or going to some other part of Trinidad and Tobago and not having to deal with them anymore. And we would have partnered with some of these women or women who live abroad now in different and even different parts of the Caribbean based on the involvement and the interactions and the partnering with NGOs and the police. You know, we get, bashed for a lot of things that we do wrong, and rightfully so. But we have a lot of invisible success that cannot be measured um, by statistics of any kind. And what has happened as well is that last year, excuse me, year before, we, based on those outreach programs, we would have seen a 25% reduction in inter-partner violence. And that was a significant thing because the following year in 2022, that too went down to another 27%. And we recognize, more importantly, more so than ever, these outreach programs do help. I am at the point where I am hoping to get sponsorship from one of these NGOs to create little skits. It's very costly. We have been planning for the longest while. We have little skits on a topic we call conversations gone wrong. And we had planned to use the superintendent's voice as the voice over to show, to help us in society communicate better in the homes and set examples for children so that we will have a better society 10 years from now, because we realize a lot of the problems are based on conversations going wrong and where people deal with his issues in the workplace, in the home, and in the street. And we had it played out showing the consequences if you did not manage your conversation from an intelligent standpoint. And we will show the other side the benefits of having that conversation that is respectful, intelligent, and outright, I don't want to say perfect, but outright ideal for the home and the school. So we have a lot of plans to increase this. The only thing is that we do not have the financial capacity to put it just before news or after news. And once we continue to get the support from even people like you all and go to different platforms, we will continue to spread. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work that is being done at this present time. But like I say, anytime you're on a mission, a good mission, Satan is always sending his assassins. And we saw one of the assassins on the streets, interfering and taking up the body of one of our colleagues, that resulted in a very distasteful image of the TTPS.
Well, let me say thank you. I'm very happy to hear that this is happening. You know, we always hear the negatives. The negatives always come to the fore, but it is really good to hear that this is happening and that you all are moving on in this positive way. So my thanks to you and all involved.
Inspector, it's interesting that the last point you shared, because your vision actually coincides with ours at Hope and Action Network. So whenever you're decided and would have got the financial support that you need to carry out such an initiative, we are willing and we are ready, because it is something that we are interested in as well. So I think we can always liaise going forward, especially in terms of that initiative. At this point, I want to thank you for your time that you would have taken to be with us this afternoon. I want to thank you for your life work in this very time, where, especially where we see violence as something that, I mean, every time you turn on the TV, every time you look at news, there is another case of something. And so we want to thank you for your work in that aspect. And I pray that God will continue to bless you and to be with you and give you the strength that you need to continue on that path. We need persons, we really do need persons like you to help our society to be a better place. You would have left us with a lot, a mouthful, but I just want to do a very quick recap as we leave for tonight. Before I do that, I just want to apologize on behalf of Dr. Ward. I know she would want to be chiming in. I know she would want to have been a part of this discussion. Unfortunately, Zoom would have failed her this evening, but she is here and she listened, and I know she would have, at some point, maybe next session, she would make the comments that she would have wanted to make today. But you said some very important things this evening. You spoke a lot about intergenerational hurts and how these hurts affect persons into their adulthood. How these, and we see how crime, how these things lead to crime and other violence in our society. And so curbing it and so seeking help is very important as persons, and we all go through many different trauma. Yeah, so it's a matter of you identifying it and actually seeking help to avoid these situations. You know, you always hear this saying that there's a thin line between sanity and insanity, and sometimes we never know, and it may not be insanity, it might just be trauma, and we never know when we slip in too far. And so it's really important that we seek help. And of course, it wouldn't be this program if I don't highlight the help from the friend of a wounded heart. Yeah, that's what this program is about. We can always call on Jesus when we need such help. If anything else fail, he wouldn't fail us. All right, and make sure persons who are in hearing my voice, make sure that we seek help, because that's the only way we will be able to overcome, and not to do something that on a regular, on a normal basis, you would not do. And remember, crime against children, it is our duty and our responsibility to report these crimes. All right, because I like in the story that was presented, we too can be held accountable, and I don't think we want that. Okay, so at this point, I want to remind you guys to like our videos that are posted up. Remember the link. Remember to share the link with other persons, because more and more persons can benefit from such a program. I mean, today was so powerful. So continue to share the link. Remember, we meet on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. We try to keep it between 10:30. So we want to thank everyone for staying with us, for joining with us this afternoon. Have a blessed evening. At this time, I believe it's Miss Joy is going to close us off in prayer. So after that, everyone have a blessed and enjoyable night.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we praise you and we thank you. We thank you, O God, that we can come to you with all circumstances of our lives. We thank you for the officer who gave his presentation, such a wonderful presentation in terms of all that was involved and in pointing us to the help that we can have. It was so good that he included the divine intervention, Lord. We know that you are indeed the friend of the wounded heart, and all our hurts we can bring to you. Father, we thank you for the information that was given, and we ask, oh God, that the hearts that heard of the hurts that are involved, Lord, that your spirit of compassion would rest on us all, oh God, and that we would reach out to help because we are indeed your body. We thank you for this program. We thank you for the vision, oh God, and even as we leave the platform, we know that your Holy Spirit goes with us in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
Good evening, everyone.